Okay. So thanks everybody for coming this morning. I want to start by thanking our panelists, of course, who I will allow to introduce themselves in a minute, but I wanted to take a quick moment and introduce myself. Also tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about this morning on the power of YouTube. So my name is Mark Allenbach. I am a Vice President at Frank Magid Associates. It's a research and consulting firm based here in New York, as well as Los Angeles and Minneapolis. Specialize in entertainment, research-based consulting, and my primary vertical is actually running our qualitative practice, mostly surrounding gaming, but also online video and a lot of areas that are very pertinent to what we're going to talk about today. So our panel this morning is about the power of YouTube. We've got a really excellent group of four that I think what I'm particularly excited about is the diverse nature of what everyone is doing in this space. And also, we're going to spend a lot of our time focused on talking about not only what's going on currently, but in the near future from a lot of these thought leaders that I think is important to leverage not only what we're seeing today, what we think we're going to see in 6 months, out a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. So without further ado, what I'd love to do is turn it over to our panelists who can introduce themselves considerably better than I will be able to. Have them tell you a little bit about themselves, a little bit about where they are and what they do, and then we'll jump into the discussion. So Drew, you'd start us off.
Hey everybody, Drew Buckley. I'm the founder and chief operating officer of Electus. I started with my partner Ben Silverman about 5 years ago. We started the company to be focusing on original content in this distribution platform universe. It was interesting when we had in our business plan, which got backed by IAC and Barry Diller, we had said, you know, we believe in less than 5 years, companies like Netflix and YouTube and others are going to fund original content. And if you think back 5 years ago, a lot of people did laugh at us because they felt like the only reason you get some of these things done on these platforms is an if you bring an advertiser, then they'll do. So flash forward, it's great to be sitting here today to be able to talk about it, to see the investment that Google, YouTube has made in terms of investing in original content. As we all saw the investment by Netflix in terms of original content. And the beauty is that there's more and the streak will continue. At the same time, Electus, we're still immersed in the traditional business of selling television shows, of which we have 17 on air, majority of which are unscripted, hopefully a lot of them that you watch and love and watch again. This year alone, we had great success in our first scripted broadcast show, Jane the Virgin, that was launched. Gina Rodriguez won the Golden Globe this year, as well as we launched Marco Polo on Netflix, the big series. At the same time, we've immersed ourselves not only in selling long programming to digital platforms, but about 2 years ago, we took over an asset that INC had acquired called College Humor, which hopefully a lot of you guys have seen some of the funny sketches from College Humor. But we really worked closely with them to kind of build out their audience network, number one, but also double down in some of the distribution points, specifically YouTube, Facebook. And in terms of YouTube, we're the largest comedy channel in terms of views, and it's really interesting to see the pattern of growth on that. And when we do launch a sketch that we get millions of views, and trying to understand what the value of that impact is as we try to exploit that intellectual property on different platforms. So.
Hello, my name is Rob Donnell. I'm the CEO and founder of BrandArc in Los Angeles. It's a branded content, branded integration, promotional, social amplification company. Our largest client is Toyota. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out new platforms to do things with guys on. YouTube is relatively new to us just this year. And I think we're seeing more brands starting to get engaged, especially now, since we're meeting with all the MCNs and looking to forward that some more this year.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Grace. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of New Form Digital. We are a data-driven studio focused on developing scripted programming for digital-first distribution. We were launched about almost a year ago in partnership with Discovery Communications, Ron Howard, and Brian Grazer. In our first year, we've funded 24 short films, and we're going into production on 4 series for Vimeo On Demand.
I'm Stephanie Horbaczewski. I'm the founder and CEO of StyleHaul. We're the largest network in the world for style content online. We produce content on 7 social platforms in partnerships with advertisers. We have 5,500 creators in 63 countries that do about 1 billion views a month just in video alone. We have 175 million reach on the social platforms. So we do really large-scale global campaigns. We've just recently started to expand our content. We are a YouTube first from a video social standpoint, but we are now looking at other distribution platforms, which I think will be a hot topic today and is a very big topic in the industry in general. We just bought our first movie at Sundance, and we sold our first format for television. So it's an ever-changing landscape.
Yeah, you used an interesting term there. You said you called yourself a YouTube first. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about what does that mean? Why'd you make that qualification?
It's a hot topic in our industry. There's a lot of conversation about whether there's competition between the networks and YouTube. There's not with StyleHaul. We co-sell a lot of our biggest programs with them. We don't sell media. We sell almost none. We sell large-scale multi-platform marketing campaigns. Half of our revenue did not come from the YouTube media landscape last year, just to give you some perspective, as compared to some other networks where it's closer to 95%. So we like the social video platform. When we started this business, brands were only in 3% of the conversation on YouTube, which is almost non-existent. And so what we do is we connect them to creators and we create marketing campaigns so they can enter the conversation. It is my belief, and I think all of you know, that where brands can't play at scale is on social platforms. The media units and the advertising plays, they're just not there and they're not satisfactory. And so really, unless you're engaging with creators and creating a marketing campaign using them on the social platforms, then you're missing a tremendous amount of conversation with millennials.
So we'll definitely talk about the audience and get into some of the discussion around millennials and what this audience looks like. But before we do any of that, what I wanted to do was kind of embrace the title of the panel and ask everybody up here if they could, in one word or one sentence, and we'll go down the line, tell me what they think the power of YouTube truly is. So Drew, in your perspective, what is the power of YouTube?
It's scale. It's global scale. It is one in which, I'm going beyond a sentence, is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's basically the ability, which everybody said in terms of the democratization of distribution, in terms of windowing and everything else, that you're able to create and post, and by just getting the upload, have a global audience. So it's now trying to understand the tried and true business models that have made a lot of producers and talent billions of dollars to understand how they are able to merge this with this global phenomenon and understand the power of scale, but how you monetize it the right way.
Great. Rob?
I would agree with scale, and I think that's why we're seeing advertisers sort of migrate over to YouTube now. But it's also, I think, about finding an audience that isn't necessarily watching television on a regular basis, more watching stuff digitally and on YouTube. So
I'm going to say access. It's access for the audience for the world's biggest library of video content. It's access for media brands and advertising brands to a global audience instantly. And it's access for IP creators and filmmakers like Newform Digital to an audience that's passionate about stories and passionate about talking about them and sharing them. And so I think each of those different categories will leverage that access in different ways.
I'm going to say engagement. We all know that you can get meaningless scale on almost any platform, but the bottom line is if people aren't talking about engaging with, sharing, liking, favoriting your content, and actually really watching it, it doesn't really matter how many views, so to speak, that you get. So I'm going to say engagement.
Yeah, and I think getting to engagement is an important point. One of the questions that I had was, there are some questions and some issues that people have with quality of views on YouTube. So the numbers and the views and all of that, people are very aware that those are astronomical. But I'm curious what your reactions are, and if you could speak a little bit about really what the quality of a YouTube view is versus another, or all views created equal. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that, Stephanie nailed it in terms of the engagement is the key. Because if you watch the video, if you share the video, if you put it on your own social graph to be able to represent that video, that's something that says, I am now a fan of this, or think that this thing is deserving of sharing. It's kind of like taking this global scale and then siphoning it off to a set of influencers, if you will, to kind of even get that message across. So that is a clean and great view. It's tough to say when people say, a lot of people say, oh, it had 1 million views. That means 1 million people must have watched it. Well, not really. Maybe somebody watched it 20 times. And it's kind of really understanding what the definition of those views are, which is hard to define, and understanding what the time, how many people did watch the video and how they really accounted for that. But I do think engagement and the social sharing of it is a true impact.
I would agree with that. But I think from a brand perspective, quality is really about brand fit. And I think a lot of people are seeing that now. But I just, I think we were seeing a lot of fully viewed shows on YouTube as well. So it's not partial views. And a lot of people coming back, big subscriber numbers for YouTubers. And I pretty much agree with what Drew said.
Yeah, I think Stephanie's point about engagement is really should be taken to heart, and whether or not people share is a big part of how, or comment or like is a big part of how you value a view. I also think, a big thing people don't understand is when someone watches something on YouTube, they're making a choice to watch it. It's not passively on the background while they clean their house, or passively on the background, in my case, while I do work emails. It is a much more engaged viewership. Anecdotally, I've heard season 3 of Video Game High School, which is a scripted series by YouTuber Freddie Wong, averaged 1 to 2 million views per episode. And that sounds really exciting, but it gets more exciting when you realize there was an 80% watch through on those 2 million views. And that was a 40-minute episode on YouTube. 2 million views, 80% of those were all the way through the entire piece of content. And that's on a platform that I think is often known for short form, viral, kitten videos, but that's not what the majority of the active audience is watching on YouTube. So they're really engaged.
Not even in the social video space. So for StyleHaul, the sweet spot's actually more like 10 to 12 minutes, which seems like a long time, but it's because they're contextualizing their content for their audience. So I agree with you that it does need to be a brand fit, but I think, there's data now that can tell you whether or not somebody is a brand fit. Are they talking about your brand? Is their audience talking about your brand? Is the sentiment positive in what they're saying? So even beyond the engagement levels, are the engagement levels, is what they're writing positive? Is it negative? Just commenting on a video doesn't necessarily mean they liked it. But I do think there's a very big difference between commenting and sharing a video and liking or favoriting it. Even those levels of engagement are different. YouTube doesn't rank them differently, but Facebook, for example, ranks the like of a comment or the like of a post even differently. So, we're starting to get much deeper into what exactly people are doing with all your content, especially if you're a brand and you're paying for it, and how are they using it and what is the sentiment of that use?
Yeah, this is actually a question for Rob too. As we talk about engagement and brand integration and these brands getting involved in YouTube, it's a door that swings both ways, right? So you're getting access to them, but there's a two-way channel level of communication where people are now commenting on your videos about your brand and talking directly to you. Have you seen that being embraced by most brands? Is that something that kind of scares your clients, or do they encourage that?
Well, it really, a lot of it comes down to execution. If brands are not working inside the context of whatever that YouTuber is doing, or if they're not part of what his voice is, the bullshit meter goes up immediately. And then you start to get negative responses. And I think most brands would, are advised, at least I would advise them to fit into whatever the context is of that show. And if they don't, they run the risk of a negative response. If they do, and it feels like it's part of the show, or it's at least in the tonality of the show, then they're getting much more positive acceptance to the brand. Unfortunately, a lot of brands just, they want a lot of product shots, they want a lot of mentions, and that just, it feels awkward in a lot of stuff that's on YouTube right now. So.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that as we look forward, I think you have to think about the fact that the 30-second spot is not going to exist the way it does today. You're already watching content on demand and you're not watching those commercials. So to his point, for a brand to be integrated into a program is going to need to feel more authentic, and they're going to need to actually be part of the content creation that everybody up here is making. I can give you an example. One of our channels did 6 hairstyles for the Hunger Games. The hair in the Hunger Games was actually a part of the story, right? It's such an integral part of what that was. So were the costumes, et cetera. So it would have made a lot of sense for a hair care brand to make videos, both tutorials about how to get that look, but also to be part of that story and integrate it into it on the social content that's outside of it, not within the movie, obviously. But I think that's a very good point that, without actually being part of a story, it's going to be very difficult for brands to get audience.
So you said something I have to throw out to the rest of the panel, which is that the 30-second spot isn't going to exist. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, I mean,
Just to clarify, before I get run down on the stage, I just said like it does today. I don't think it's going to exist the same way.
Well, and I'll go ahead and jump in here too. I personally agree with you. But I'd love to hear some opinions from the rest of the panel.
It'll exist, but it'll be different. It doesn't get the audience that it does right now. I mean,
It might get skipped.
yeah, and I think sports is the last thing we're seeing people watch live right now. So, and even then, people are getting up and going to the bathroom or going to the kitchen or what they've been doing for years. But I don't know how many people even watch live television anymore.
Yeah.
Event-based programming only. So award shows, sports,
Yeah.
et cetera. So I think, you will see people are willing to pay for content now. We've seen it over and over again, which means that, as I said, the 30-second spot won't exist in the same way it
Yeah,
does
and
today.
even those live events, I feel like more and more people are watching the Oscars the day after in clip form.
Or watching it on your social platforms. You're watching it on Instagram, you're watching it on Twitter, you're engaging in the conversation. I mean, I couldn't watch the Super Bowl. Granted, I'm a Pats fan, so I had to be on Twitter, but I couldn't watch it without being on my social handles. To be honest, I probably could have consumed a lot of the game on my phone.
Yeah. In terms of the 30-second spot, I mean, I think you see a lot of brands getting really creative and platforms as well. I think Vessel's, the introduction of Vessel and the way their pre-roll works is it's a 5-second pre-roll. It might even, it's very elegant in the product design, at least in the beta that I'm testing. And then if you look at like what Geico did in the last 48 hours, I don't know when they launched that on YouTube, but the kind of unskippable 5-second pre-roll was fun.
Yeah.
It's fun, and people are actually talking about it because they're being innovative.
Yeah, and the other thing you see brands creating content, and out of that content come their commercials. So if they're creating something that's long form, could be 60 minutes, they'll pull out 2 or 3 commercials, but then they'll put the rest of it out on digital platforms.
Yeah, I mean, you see Marriott and Red Bull getting into the game.
yeah, I think it's just like everything changes hard, and you have a lot of these new platforms just moving so fast. And you do have institutions of creative advertising agencies and media agencies that are used to hiring a great director, shooting a spot, getting behind that spot within the campaign and it being distributed. And now, having to think through, is that the biggest impact of our dollars that we're going to do? What do we really need to do to diversify that spend to be able to touch all the different audiences that we need to on that one campaign? It may not be just the one creative execution of a commercial that does it, and now trying to think through what are the different executions you need to do to be able to hit your message to the audience.
In our case, we also, we create, like I said, we create experiential content for brands and integrate them into natural experiences for our creators. But we even extend the experience beyond that, and we turn them into native ads. So Instagram, their YouTube ads, their YouTube videos, we cut down into 30-second spots, and they perform at about 3 times the rate of a brand's content. So their content is expanding even beyond just the creative content, but into that's actually being used as the brand messaging. So, that's pretty progressive for brands. And it, from that play, it becomes a global one, which is something that is possible on television, but is online. And I think that's really important to see. We run 3-year-long global campaigns right now for brands. And so while they're differences within markets or differences within products, they're actually able to execute a global message, which they haven't been able to do before.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about what are some of the common misconceptions you think there still are out there about YouTube. I already heard the cat video comment, which I love. I'm personally a fan of cat videos. But what are some of the misconceptions, or what are some of the myths maybe that people still believe about YouTube that aren't necessarily true today as a platform?
I mean, I would say you talked a little bit about the quality of the content. We talked about engagement. So where do we fall down on that? If something looks beautiful but nobody sees it, is that better quality than a video that 80% of the viewers engaged with? Well, if I were a brand, no, it wouldn't for me, right? So I think one of the misconceptions is how we're defining quality or premium content. For us, we storyboard every video for brands, so it is premium content, really authentic to the ecosystem. We even help produce it, edit it, et cetera. You would never know. You would never know the difference. But it helps us to make sure that we're getting exactly the message that brands need, or the the product shots, to your point, that they need in a more organic way. And so I think one big misconception that needs to be dealt with is how we're defining the word premium.
I think there's a common misconception that people don't make money on YouTube, both within the business community or even just like my family, like extended family. They're like, people make money on YouTube? I'm like, yes, they're ads. You watch them. So I do think there is that challenge. I think a lot of people think YouTube is not a place to build a business. It's not a place to build your entire business, but it's a big part of your business if you're in media, for sure.
I suggest, if you still think that you join me at VidCon this year, where 25,000 people showed up. Some of them waited 7 hours in line, 7,000 people, to see a creator and take a picture with them that some of you have probably never heard of. So if you think they're still not making money, go look at the fact that Zoella outsold Harry Potter in her book. I think that misconception is changing quickly, and certainly some of the other, video game high school, I think you mentioned, and some of the other long-form content that we're seeing online. But I would say that is long dead.
And I think it's also the misconception that you have to go to a portal. I worked years ago at Yahoo, where the front door of Yahoo was the epic part of being able to get your content surfaced and seen and get the views. YouTube is this omnipotent being. You don't have to just be at the front page of youtube.com. You have your own way of being able to tailor which content you want to see, and then how that can get embedded in different platforms around the web. So it is something where it doesn't have to be just one specific destination. It's kind of interesting how it can live everywhere.
Again, I think you're seeing all these personalities emerge from YouTube that I think there's a general misconception that they're not relevant, or they're small, or have a tiny fan base of some kind. And I think we're seeing, VidCon was a perfect example this year of just insanity around celebrity. But they're not household names, these people. So they're very targeted, they're very specific audiences. And, I think it's going to continue to grow.
I would disagree. They are household names. They're just not head of household names. Your dad doesn't know about them, but your 13-year-old daughter most definitely knows who Zoella is and loves her.
Yeah,
I think that's true. But if you again, I think what brands see, and what we're trying to get to is like they still walk across and see their newsstands, which I know is an outdated concept. But the cover of the Us Weekly is the Real Housewives of New Jersey. It's not somebody from YouTube yet, and so. The reality is that these mediums will change, and to be honest with you, that these next generation, millennials, however you want to define them, have a different relationship with the talent because of the engagement that we would never see. Back in the day, you have a fan club and you'd be the #1 fan of a band or a talent and maybe send letters back and forth. Now it's, you can message to them, you're following them, you actually have a relationship with it. And it's kind of the interesting component about how talent is today, is that you have to be authentic and you have to be consistent with your audience. It's not something that you kind of show up in a move and you're out. You are consistently talking to this audience, and to be honest with you, opening up more than you probably would most talent does with their publicists. So it's kind of an interesting concept on how the next generation looks at this talent, engages with this talent, and actually supports them throughout their careers.
I think, we all know the bottom line is the more money they move, the more you're going to see it. It's a little tough with millennials that have less spending power. So you're going to keep seeing the Real Housewives on the covers of magazines until you see more spending power. We did a campaign with a drugstore brand that hadn't sold online. They sold out of their pallets online in 2 weeks. I can tell you we had their attention, and now their campaign is expanding globally. So I think the more money you see and the more spending power you see along with these people, Camp Dakota, when it premiered last year against the Oscars movies, was sitting with the Oscar-nominated titles on iTunes as the most downloaded film. I can assure you that everybody in the film industry was paying a lot of attention to what was going on with those YouTube stars. So I agree with you. They may not be household names the way we all associate them with, but they will get there. They absolutely will.
Do we think, and there's some cross for sure, web therapy, and somebody was mentioning, Fallon's presence in those. Do you think we're going to see migration from television or more traditional media to YouTube, migration from YouTube to those, or is it a flawed question? Are they all just going to keep mixing?
Listen, it's a great question. I mean, basically, we look at what we're doing on YouTube and our College Humor as kind of formats that we hope to then build out to television shows that we sell for distribution points, because TV, you're kind of conditioned to watch a 30-minute or 60-minute show, right? You may not be as conditioned to do that for YouTube, especially comedy. Comedy is a pretty quick sketch. You got to get to the joke. You're in, you're out. But we were talking about it, I think, pre-sitting down, which is, I think Fallon's a great example of launching on TV, and then the next day you're watching it on YouTube. I think Steve Burke said last week that 70% of the audience that watches Fallon watches it online. Because not sure how many people are staying up 11:35 till 12:30 to watch his show, but you're catching it the next day on
You can even catch
YouTube.
it that same day. I think they upload all the clips at the East Coast broadcast. So if you live in LA, you see everything on Fallon before it
great.
airs on TV.
But they're not getting any. They don't monetize their
YouTube channel.
YouTube
no.
channel, and then they're basically potentially eroding whatever the ratings are based on the other systems. So it's interesting. It's an interesting concept for them to kind of think through how they're going to best monetize that show.
And you can see him as well as Ellen and Kimmel. A lot of the talk show hosts, I think, are naturally able to do this in digital, just the nature of the format of the show, as well as their personalities, because it's so personality driven. They are evolving the format, especially in Fallon. You can see it very aggressively happening in the creative to be successful on digital platforms. And they are leveraging that content for weeks afterwards. You know, I follow Fallon across Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, just to watch how he will take a clip, you know, Roots playing children's instruments with Idina Menzel, and he will re-promote that across their social for 6 to 8 weeks and re-get views across Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter.
But it's also kind of
it's
redefining the point of you go on Fallon not just to be on NBC at 11:35, that you now have a viral video.
Yeah.
And it's like
huge.
an interesting thing. That's why his bookings are probably getting so much better because of the fact, and Kimmel, because of the fact that they have this platform to be able to get, you know, hey, you want a viral video, post this. I think Christina Aguilera last week had 25 million views on
The
her
Britney
video.
Spears impression. Yeah. And it's not just your normal interview. I think it's also fun from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, he's really a performance. I mean, he's singing, he's dancing. I would say the other thing to think about is the fusion between the content. So we just recently did a partnership with a television show, and we took the content and we worked with our creators and we contextualized it, and they, you know, did videos that were inspired by characters, inspired by looks. So the content was sort of flooding through this millennial ecosystem, and the show premiered #1 on the network for the #1 premiered show on the network for the last 3 years. So, you know, I think I can speak for Stylehaul that we certainly support television. We're very interested in that format. There's obviously a lot of money, and I think there's a lot of partnership if you can make those dollars flow down and you can kind of tighten up that, you know, typically you sell a show format. So it's not actually the people that created that are selling it, it's the network that's selling it. But if we can actually bring those parties together better and create the kind of partnership that we did, I think you'll see a lot more going on between the digital ecosystem and the television ecosystem, even if it's, you know, just repurposing each other's content or using parts of it to recreate new content.
So just one last quick follow-up, and then I'm actually going to open up to the audience for a couple questions at the halfway point, because I don't want to reserve everything to the end, but it's actually specifically for Kathleen. So with new form, and while you guys are thinking about longer form content and some of these things, do you have the traditional, are you looking for a lead, are you looking for a headline, and where are you looking for that? Are you kind of organically growing talent?
Oh, how are we discovering what we're making?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? So how we work with, you know, my background prior to running New Form Digital was I was at YouTube for 3 years. And when you have worked at Google YouTube, you drink the data Kool-Aid, and it's really hard to turn back from the data Kool-Aid. So we use a lot of tools like Tubular Labs, as well as I live and die by VidStatsX, which is a really cool site to quickly surface fast rising YouTubers. And so we look at the talent on the platform. We do use data to determine, you know, are they growing an audience? How many subscribers have they picked up in the last 90 days? What does their engagement and watch time look like? And then that probably gets us, I would say, 70 to 80% there in terms of this is the pool of people we're going to look at. The last mile is definitely a creative conversation. Can they do scripted cinematic storytelling? Will the audience consume scripted cinematic storytelling from this talent? We worked with a YouTuber who I think is in StyleHaul, Joey Graceffa,
Yep.
right? Joey Graceffa, to do a short film with him in the world of virtual reality. He, normally if you go to his channel, what you see is Joey vlogging in his car, or doing cool things, or doing, cinnamon challenges with his friends. So it's a stretch to think that he could produce a sci-fi genre short film. Well, he did, and it is great. And his audience watched our short film on his channel, 250% higher watch time in our short film on his channel than the vlogs in the last 90 days on his channel. They engage 60% more on our short film versus vlogs in those last 90 days. Now, that is built up on, and that reaction is built on a community he has spent years cultivating. And we're seeing, okay, what else are they interested in? Can they be interested in more? I think he's doing lots of great projects with StyleHaul as well in the scripted space. So we use a little bit to surface that out. You're doing storytelling? I don't know if that was
we're doing another project with him. I know that YouTube is doing some projects with him. Joey is truly an example of a creator that has been able to move into this, who's been able to transition.
And we use data both to discover that talent and then test how our content does with them and their audience.
Great. So I promised I would open up for questions. I think the mics are floating. If we could take a couple, if anyone has any at this point, or we can reserve till the end. Got one in the middle there, as far as humanly possible, or we can go in the front, just closer.
Hey, how's it going? Stephanie, I want to know, who are your top 3 creators on StyleHaul? And who is your top 3 that you like?
Okay, so when you say top 3, do you mean the most brand friendly? Do you mean from a size perspective, from an engagement perspective?
An engagement perspective.
Well, gosh, it fluctuates, right? I would say that Joey's probably up there. Zoella is up there. Dulce Candy is up there. Key Polish is up there. There's, probably the top 20 kind of fluctuate in and out of that slot. Who are my favorites? So I personally recruited 250 of the channels that are in our network. I'm very close to them. I was texting with about 6 of them last night because they were seeing a story I was talking about in my own life. I'm very close to them. I don't think I could possibly pick a favorite. But I'm very close to the talent, as I'm sure all of them are. You can't pick a favorite.
Hi, there have been more and more reports about Facebook aggressively pursuing YouTube stars, even before they have pre-roll ads to monetize the content. How do we imagine YouTube is going to evolve in response to this? Are they moving away from user-generated content in general, or what are we expecting?
I can't speculate on what YouTube would be doing, but I do think Facebook videos are a really interesting platform for YouTubers and content creators in general right now. I'm hearing a lot talking to people about it. They are saying things like, it's like 2005 on YouTube. Facebook is like 2005 on YouTube. It's awesome. We can do all this crazy stuff. And I'm seeing, at least anecdotally, and I've heard some people say internally at YouTube that they're seeing videos that were popular on YouTube 5 years ago go reviral on Facebook. And so it's a really interesting, exciting place to be right now. And I'm sure there are YouTubers who are aggressively pursuing it as part of their strategy. I know College Humor is, from talking to the guys, they're uploading a lot of stuff from Facebook and seeing.
I think you got to look at customer behavior, right? So the YouTube platform has a very different audience than the Facebook platform. I use Facebook, for example, it's a resource tool. I can run right through my feed, like all my high school friends' babies, boom, done. I've engaged with everybody. I'm out the door, right? The YouTube audience is totally different. The other thing is that I didn't grow up consuming video as my medium, and neither did any of them. So for us, it would be difficult to speculate what YouTube's going to do. As my YouTube audience says to me, "Oh, Facebook, like I have no use for that." I'm like, "Oh, you will. You will when you don't want to look through a Pope Picasso album of somebody learning to crawl. You'll learn to love Facebook, right?" So I think that you'll see this. We have this entire generation of people that have grown up consuming video as their content medium, and we're about to see what they're going to do with that. So I think I would suggest that you look beyond just Facebook. I would look at some other platforms and where video is going to play into them. And I'm not just talking about the short form content and the social video that we're talking about, but the long form content. You're going to be able to consume content in a lot more places. Verizon, Samsung, there's devices that are putting content plays on there. There's, Amazon, YouTube, Facebook. So I think you got to look well beyond just that platform.
I think it's interesting to think through is that not each platform is the same, right? That's one thing I think people just quickly say, oh, it's got to be the same. The reality is like for us, we post a lot, our College Humor posts a lot on Facebook, and we are resurfacing old creative sketches that we did, and we're getting great impact. But again, Stephanie said it's in a feed, right? Where it's got to be timely, it's got to be uploaded, it's got to hit your news feed.
It's gotta be
it's
visually
not like,
interesting.
Yeah, it's not like I am, when I'm on my College Humor YouTube channel, I'll see one video and I'll get surfaced to recommend another video, and I'll see that and I'll see that. Whereas on Facebook, it's timely and it's there. And I may not be going through my library, you know, on it unless I keep on scrolling down. So Facebook is great. It hits a big point. We get a great reaction for it. It's different than YouTube. It's just different, as a lot of these platforms are going to be different. It's how you're going to be able to surface your content and then look to see how people are viewing that content, and then how business model you're going to overlay into that to be able to make money on it.
Yeah, it's just a difference in behavior, guys. Just scrolling through your feed on YouTube, on Facebook, and you see a video you like and you press play.
And
YouTube,
you move on
these
to
are,
baby pictures.
and you move on when you move on to you move on to whatever's next underneath it. Whereas YouTube, like these creators, they have a relationship with them. It's more like your favorite television show. They're going back every day to watch whatever video they're putting up. Then they're going to Snapchat. Then they're going to Instagram. Then they're going to Twitter. Then they're going, etc. Right, all the way through, and they're engaging in all of the content that these people are creating, not just that one platform. So it's a totally different customer behavior experience.
It's just another tool in people's toolkit.
Yeah, and even to that point, I mean, Facebook is almost forced engagement. I mean, autoplays, right? So
Right.
there's been a lot.
It does autoplay. That is,
And just starts playing
special.
immediately, which is very different than clicking on. Great. Okay, I think we'll take one more now, and then we'll reserve the rest till the end.
Donnell, this is really true. And one other side of devices is the actual broadband connection into the home. And since so much really does depend on a great Wi-Fi connection, it's typically a cable operator. I just wondered how you're thinking about the cable industry, distribution, speed, prioritization, that type of thing with the multi-video program distributors.
I mean, I'm for one very happy with the FCC's decision around net neutrality. I'm pretty pumped about that.
Net neutrality hand grenade.
Like, I think that's really exciting.
Right, but Zuck bought WhatsApp to get into mobile, to providing mobile in Europe, right? India is going to soon become the biggest market in the world once they're able to get access to broadband the way that we have it here. I mean, I think it's a massively important aspect of our business that none of us are ignoring, but we don't build the pipes, right? So we support them just like we're becoming platform agnostic. Fundamentally, we have to support the broadband. We have to support the providers that are allowing all of this to be possible on these devices, because we're content providers and we're influencer creators, and we don't make the pipes. So I would say we're very supportive of what all of them are doing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You also got to understand the over the top, which a lot of people are looking at. You know, it's a different set of content that you're used to. As people over the top is the Netflix, where you get to watch, you know, premium shows on a subscription basis as you do HBO Go. And now you're starting to see others in this TV everywhere category that you can have, like a History Channel over the top app, only if you're authenticated through, let's say, your local Time Warner or Cablevision or something else. But again, it's a viewing experience that you get if you really like the one contextual area of that content, and you want to, you know, just basically binge view, let's say, a bunch of shows on any channel. And so it's just another way to think through what content that we're creating, and then what the appetite is to be able to put it on an over the top.
If I could just ask one more along these lines, Google's been really frustrated by how slow the cable industry is moving towards higher speeds. And so they did about 7 or 8 cities of their own. Kansas City was the first one. I just wonder if any of you have any granular data. Did things go better? Did you have higher viewership in Kansas City thanks to the Google high-speed internet connection?
Yeah, I don't think Google's sharing that as they don't always share. I will say that I just helped a 20-year-old set up his apartment for college. He wanted a 50-inch flat screen TV. So I think one thing important to know is let's separate devices and physical units from content. Just because we call it a TV show doesn't really have anything to do with the actual device it's on, right? So he wanted a 50-inch flat screen, and he wanted broadband. He wanted his internet connection. What he didn't want was a $200 cable bill. So that's what he didn't get. I think that it's important to note that people are going to continue to provide themselves these physical devices to watch whatever type of content that they're interested in, but not necessarily in the way that we all are. I still have a cable bill and a broadband bill and a gigantic cell phone bill and 4 other devices that aren't up here with me, right? So I mean, I'm still consuming it and buying it everywhere, but here's this 20-year-old and he's not.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting analysis to do around, the speed of the person's at-home internet versus their engagement. One way to backdoor that might be to look at people who are watching in HD, how they might differ than people who aren't, some of those. I'm not sure about Kansas City specifically with Google. I don't know how big of an impact that had or in that specific market. But
I'd go look at India, 2G, and people look at the rates that people are watching video. I think India is a really interesting market to look at if you want to see how some of this is going to be impacted.
Yeah.
That would be my suggestion.
And as someone who talks to a lot of consumers, I can add YouTube is actually rises to the top in our research is the thing they're most likely to go to when they have low broadband. It's actually the least big hog. And also because they're able to watch the type of content they want that they know doesn't need to be in HD. So they can watch a vlog or they can watch something that they feel like they get the majority of what they want out of it without getting 1080p 60 frames.
And all the content providers that are allowing you to download the videos that you want to watch, including Mark, by the way, allowing you to select it and watch it later, allowing you to download it now. It'll clog up your phone or your iPad or whatever device you're watching on, but allowing you to download and watch it later. So it'll make connectivity less important.
Yeah, we've kind of talked around it a little bit, but I'd love to have a short discussion around where people are watching YouTube, right? Because I think the belief is, majority on PC, but I don't know that that's entirely true anymore. And I just got a face from Kathleen, so go ahead.
No, I think the public-facing stat is 60% of their audience is mobile.
Yeah, I think that's about what they said. I mean,
I think that's what they
about
said.
it.
I think
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, 60% of their audience is mobile. So that's a lot of mobile traffic. I don't know if that's mobile app or mobile web. That's not differentiated in the stat, but that's a lot of tablets and phones.
Yeah, so in that case, mobile means tablet and phone, right?
I'm assuming, yes.
Yes.
Rob, what do you think are the implications for advertising and for brands about that amount of the content being viewed mobilely, so presumably outside the home? Although, just because it's on mobile doesn't mean it's outside the home, but on mobile.
Actually, I think brands don't care which platform it's on as long as people are watching that platform. And what we're trying to do with content is make sure it's on as many platforms as possible, and find the audiences that way. It's actually hard to aggregate all the different data right now for us to find out where some of our content airs. But I don't think brands, another thing that's becoming bigger for brands is VOD too, because it's just, there are shows now that have more VOD views than they do live views. And, it's just, how are we going to engage with those platforms? I think the best brands are being agnostic to the platform.
Data, guys, it's data, right? I mean, you want to shatter all of these misconceptions, it's data. To our point, 60 to 80% engagement rates on mobile video. You think of mobile as being, you're so oversaturated, switching from thing to thing like that. You don't really have your attention. Well, you do if you watch 60 to 80% of the video, right? So it comes down to data. Are people engaging with it? Are the retention rates where they want to be? I mean, brands are going to respond to data.
Great. A little bit about the audience. Again, something we've talked about a fair bit, but I mean, is this mostly still a very young audience? Is it starting to grow and expand?
I think it's, look, I think the core of it is a younger audience in terms of how, I think some of the, you're seeing that in some of the view counts. If you go to, this VidStatsX, which is a great place, and you get to see what are the big drivers. I think that some of the big drivers of this community are game-related content, in terms of people watching others play games. I know to some they think like, what? Yeah, people love to watch other people play Minecraft or, Call of Duty and others. It's a big thing, not only on the YouTube platform, but on Twitch. Obviously, comedy is big in terms of, the new form comedy, whether it's stuff that we do on a sketch basis or if it's a personality that just has a funny, irreverent take on life that people love to watch. Interesting that in the female category, it's really style related and fashion and makeup and how to. And I think those are the big areas of how people are watching content.
Music is huge
Music
for
too,
YouTube
sorry, yeah.
in particular. Music is, that's why they're in beta on the music key.
I can shock all of you. Half of our audience is north of the age of 24. Now, our sweet spot is the mid-20s. It's the people that have been growing up with these creators over the last 7 years that have been working on it, but that will tell you that it's a pretty broad audience. Now, to your point, I would say our content is a 60-40 split between video, social networking, and resource-based, how to make your hair look good when it's snowing out, right? Tutorial-based, usually contextualized by their life experiences or who they are. But, you know, we watch Fleur de Force go from dating to getting married to buying a house to now, you know, she's expanding her career. And so people are, you know, all of her fashion and beauty tutorials and her cooking tutorials, they're contextualized by her life. So, you know, that creator in particular has spent the last 7 years growing up with their audience.
Yeah, and you hit on something that I think is fundamentally different and so interesting is the speed with which a YouTube creator can adapt and can look at what's being successful and tomorrow try something new as opposed to
Today.
Yeah.
Right now on Instagram while we're all talking about it.
So what's the future of YouTube? There's a lot of headlines about how YouTube hasn't been profitable for Google and that, you know, some people thinking they need to consider changes and those things. And I'm asking you to prognosticate. I know you don't know exactly what YouTube is going to do, but where do you see it going as people who live in this space and are experts, and what's the near future and then a little bit further future?
I think, you know, because of their scale, they have a lot of things that they're potentially going to try, you know, whether it's more premium content investment in terms of seeing what the reaction is with advertisers, whether they are looking at any, you know, I know that they have some EST pay-per-view elements as well, or if it's also things that they maybe do a full subscription in certain categories. I think because of where they are, which is the dominant player, they have the ability to try a bunch of things and then tier things and everything else, as opposed to others that may just have to stick on a specific niche, which is, hey, we're just video on demand. That's all we're about. Or, hey, we're going to be just the subscription play. But I think with YouTube, they have the ability to do not only the freemium model, which is ad supported, but also try a bunch of other things based on their scale.
Well, I think obviously they're the leader. I think you're going to see more brands moving in that direction, trying to take advantage of it, learn from it. You know, something, and I know I'm going to get corrected on this, are they going to be doing big original programming on YouTube? I don't know. You know, I've heard people talk about that, but they seem to have a lot of really good programming now. So why would they sort of try to follow a Netflix, Amazon model of trying to create stuff from the ground up and advertise it, promote it as their sort of thing that you'd have to come to YouTube for? I've heard people talk about that, but I'm not sure I believe it. So.
I mean, I think for me, it's not as interesting to speculate about what YouTube will be doing because I think they're not going away. They're going to try a lot of different stuff, like Drew said. They're the second largest search engine in the world after Google. Like, that's what you have to remember. So, like, even if we, you know, all of us go and diversify our revenue and distribution platforms with Vessel or Vimeo and other video partners, you're still going to be in the business of YouTube, whether or not you want to be. And so what they change and do, it's going to be great. And hopefully you can roll with the punches and participate in some of those experiments they're doing, if it's original programming or subscription or whatever. But they have a 10th largest video platform and they're the second largest search engine. So for content creators like myself and like companies like StyleHaul, they're a big part of your business no matter what, and you're going to evolve with them, but you're also going to find other partners to work with and distribute your content, OTT apps, et cetera. And so you'll roll with the punches as YouTube changes, just like you rolled with the punches when Google changes their search algorithms. Like, it's just not going away.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that. They're the two largest search engines, which means when they pull down the white space, they know exactly what you're looking for and you're not getting, which means they can answer the underserved market within a week of knowing what people are looking for. For example, we looked one week and the most underserved content market was vegan cooking recipes, right? So a brand could answer that and enter that market within a week of knowing what people want. As far as what they're going to do, they follow their viewers. They follow what people are doing. They're Google, right? Like they know you and they know what you're doing. They know better than you know what you're doing. So they're going to follow the behavioral patterns that you're telling them you're doing. And I would expect to see them play in every space that you see everyone else playing in, but they know who they are. They're not differentiating from that. They're not content providers. Legally, they're never going to be. We just covered that they're the 2 largest search engines. They're going to let that be the jobs of the people up here. But, search plus content, think about it, there's nothing stronger. So, I expect to see them do everything that you're all doing.
Kind of quick side question on that. So they announced recently the kids specific app. Do you think that's a signal that they're going to continue to do that? Is there going to be a fashion app? Or is it more like Netflix? This was a low-hanging fruit, a really obvious choice, and this will be their only fragmentation of content.
I mean, I think they tell you that they're going to see how it goes. I think people are more and more willing to pay for content. We're all doing it in some capacity, right? So I think, the likelihood that they'll continue to find audiences who are willing to have non-ad supported content is pretty high. But they're YouTube, to a point. They're Google. They can decide today to do something and do it tomorrow. So you'll know.
And the kids app is very cool, by the way. You guys should download it. I like it a lot. And they've announced, or they've been in early stages of a music app. So we'll see where that goes. A kind of a listen to music a la Spotify, but it's also video.
And Vivo.
And Vivo. So I think they're going to do it in categories that it makes sense. I don't think they're going to roll out a ton of apps because they're smarter than that.
Agreed.
So we're coming out with about 10 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and open up again to the audience for some questions here with the mics for the last 10 minutes or so. And we will start to wrap up. So probably have time for 2, maybe 3 or 4 questions.
Now, this question for Stephanie. Can you help us understand what kind of traffic data that Google is providing you in terms of giving some insight on the audience? And also my second question is, how much flexibility do you have in terms of, as a content creator, in terms of deciding which advertiser will participate in your content, or whether you participate in skippable ads or not? Just curious. Thanks.
The content creators are very, very specific, guys, about who they'll work with. It's authentic only. If they don't like the brand, they're not going to work with them. No amount of money is going to change it. So, the content creators and the brands, it's a dating. They have to find each other. They both have to like each other. It has to work. It has to be organic. As far as the data that we get, we get a lot of data there, but where we're finding sort of more interestingly is the data that we're working on ourselves and our own product, which, to your point, looking at it, you can look at a lot of data and very quickly tell who's going to grow. What we're actually finding brands are most interested now is our Rising Star and our up and coming programs, which we're able to look across 7 social platforms. We can tell you who the next stars are going to be. So if the stars are a relatively oversaturated market in the style section, which I think we can all agree that they probably are, we're able to go to some of the big brands and say, well, we can give you the people that are going to be the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 of these people. And they're able to get, a relationship with them a lot earlier on and before they're oversaturated by working with multiple brands. So, and that we look at by pulling down engagement levels across 7 social platforms and doing our own data. But, you can get a lot of data on these platforms now that most of them have open APIs. We're doing a lot of really interesting things. The reports, which if I had an example, I'd show you, but the reports we're providing back to advertisers are extremely comprehensive. Not only have we over-delivered on every campaign that we've ever run for an advertiser, which is a really difficult thing to say in this marketplace, but we're able to show you usually that a substantial portion of your campaign was paid for in earned media alone. So, there's a lot of, to your point, data is your friend. The more data we have, the better off we are.
Relative to global audiences, as you see some of your influencers take hold in various international markets, how are you starting to think about localization of content? Are you thinking about translations? Are you thinking about subtitling? Love to hear your thoughts there.
So I can tell you for StyleHaul, we have 5 offices around the world. We have an office in Singapore and an office in the UK who runs all of Europe. The UK was the first market we went into in a heavy way, and we're about to put somebody in Brazil. We have the largest Spanish and Portuguese network in style, which is called StyleHaul Mundo. It's growing at a tremendous rate, 200 to 400% rate, growth rates in subscribers. So it's a really interesting market for us. It does about 1/10 of the network views. And in Singapore, we followed advertisers. So, we follow the money. The interesting part for all of us is we're startups. So we're stuck a little bit in that place where we can't wait too long to follow the market because then we're going to miss it, but we can't go too far ahead because we don't have the money to waste waiting for it to grow. So you kind of got to time it just right. So for us, the real, the areas where we're really localizing globally are Brazil, Singapore, and the UK.
I think it's interesting for us because, a big part of our business is when we sell our TV shows into the networks, a big position we have is we retain the format internationally. So, for example, we have a show on NBC, it's airing in the summer called Food Fighters, and it's kind of your pros versus your Joes. And a big part of our business is being able to localize that in Russia, in Mexico, in Spain. And that's kind of the format fees that we continue to get. I think it's interesting as we look internationally through YouTube to figure out, what are the formats that we can look at that we can, basically exploit on the other platforms. But it is also a concern for us where if our content is ever shown on YouTube internationally, it's a global set, and therefore we're kind of devaluing the asset that we're trying to create. So it's definitely interesting and we kind of monitor it as well.
Kathleen, does New Form have an international kind of position?
Not yet. We're not
Okay.
like Stephanie said.
Yeah.
I mean, we work with actually a lot of UK filmmakers, but it's just because we like them and they're good talent.
And they're explosive right now.
And they're
Localization
growing.
challenges are a little smaller. And
Yeah.
It took us, just one example, we're a startup, it took us 4 months to find someone in Singapore. So even though we had the opportunity, even though we had the brand ready to do the deal, we needed somebody on the ground, we needed them to run that program. And it took us 4 months just to locate someone because we're not in Singapore. So, there's all kinds of challenges at the size that we are.
Speaking to the idea of you guys being part of startups, sorry, I'm over here. I could stand up. That would help. Speaking to that idea, do you often take on other people who are startups in their content as well and try to grow together? Or do you mostly just try to look for people who already have a base that you can kind of latch onto and go from there?
I think the answer is probably different across this table, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. For us, I mean, we have, an entire gradation of size and scale of startups, and we do a lot of partnerships. I mean, as you heard her mention, we all work with a lot of the data. There's a lot of adjunct companies coming up in the ecosystem that are doing stuff better than we can. I'm not going to pull down all the data on YouTube every month the way Tubular does. It doesn't make any sense from a monetary standpoint. It doesn't make any sense from a business standpoint, but I sure would like it, right? So, I mean, we work with a lot of the other startups that are doing stuff that we don't do as well. I mean, Zephyr does some really amazing things. Broadband TV does some really amazing things from the tech side and perspective that we just don't have the experience to do. So I think I would say we all probably work a lot with some of the other startups in our ecosystem in areas that we don't have strengths in. I say that every one of my creators is an entrepreneur as well. I mean, they're running clothing lines, they're running books, as I said. So even down to that granular level of entrepreneurs we work with. So for me, I would say it's across the board.
Yeah, I mean, ditto for us. We work closely with startups like Tubular Labs. We work close, each of the creators, we are really an IP business. So we'll work with them on a film or a series or a project, which means they still will probably be working with an MCN like StyleHaul. But as we think about that project, we think, what are the merchandising opportunities? What are the advertising opportunities? And we build those together with them. It's really collaborative.
Yeah, I think we've done something together.
Yeah.
We've done something together. So just on this panel alone, we've done something with 2 of the 3.
And so Stephanie hit on something that Kathleen, I want to ask you to comment on. So in your former life at YouTube space, LA,
Yes.
right? Can you give us just a little bit more of a picture of what these creators are kind of really like and what their spirit is? And
IRL, like the actual filmmakers?
yes.
Yeah, sure. They're entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that's the thing that impresses myself the most about the YouTube creators. It's also the thing, we produced initially 14 films in the kind of the first few months of our existence and as proofs of concept for digital series. And as part of that, we had all 14 of the filmmakers meet Ron and Brian at the Imagine offices. And the most interesting part of that 90-minute to 2-hour-long conversation that was originally scheduled for 30 minutes was how much Ron and Brian and Michael Rosenberg, who's the co-chairman of Imagine, dug into them about, oh, so you like, you know, Ron was like, oh, so you have like audience. And they were like, yeah, I have 1 million subscribers. And Ron's like, so when you make your movies, they just watch them. And they're like, yeah. And he's like, so, and you built that all yourself? Like they just, you know, and they finally got it and they found it. That's the thing that's exciting about this ecosystem is that when you're partnering with this talent, you're partnering with someone who brings a lot of creative chops to the table, who brings audience to the table, but also just brings an entrepreneurial spirit. You know, if they've built any number of subscribers from 5,000 to 10,000 to 500,000 to 5 million, they have earned every single one of those with sweat equity. And that is the most, I mean, I'm impressed with anyone who has any subscribers because that shit is hard. It's hard to do and it's impressive.
And, you know, from a premium content, go look at Machinima. I mean, they were pioneers in the space. Alan was my co-founder. He's the founder of Machinima. I mean, they were able to bring Mortal Kombat back to life, and then it got picked up as a movie as a result of that series. I mean, if you go watch that series, it's better than anything I've seen on TV. Receiver is better than anything I've seen on TV. And his engagement numbers were better than anything on TV. So, you know, it's just, the content is spectacular. The quality of the content is spectacular. And the access to viewership, to her point, is spectacular. I mean, you just can't ignore this.
Yeah. Right. So I think maybe one more question.
Maybe sort of in conjunction with these questions, a lot of the content creators that you're talking about are initially people, like you said, who provide sweat equity and are building this up on with themselves. But there's also brands that are tapping into content creators and brand ambassadors. Are you finding that you're have been working or have not been working with brands who are bringing different ambassadors to you guys for content creation?
In my experience with that YouTube as well as so far in Newform, it's more like we talk to a brand, and I'm sure Stephanie has this experience too, and say, here's a great content creator that matches your brand, or here's 15 we think match your brand, and the brand then maybe has a few they have in mind, but they don't have as a sophisticated bench as I think.
Yeah, I think
no, a little bit in the
know,
TV
but
crossover. I'd say there's a little bit of that, you know, with style experts and beauty experts that are brand ambassadors. I mean, a little bit of it, but they're really coming to us for their new audience. We had a project over the holidays. They wanted new customers to an online e-commerce site. Well, we were able to show them that we drove 50% of their traffic over the holiday season, and shopping customers was new. So they're coming to us for something that they can't get other places, I would say.
It's true.
Really,
I think brands are always looking for talent that speaks to a different audience, authentic. So we always get pitches from people like this, and you know, we continue to look for other people too that we might think would fit, and seek them out. But it's really, I haven't seen anybody cross over from sort of somebody that's a brand ambassador. I mean, it may be that they're just distributing some other content on YouTube, but not really using YouTube specifically as a platform.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Oliver, I think.
yeah, he doesn't.
He's the only one kind of in that world that I think Ellen and Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel have done it, but Jamie Oliver he's built an app. He's got a great Instagram. He has a great YouTube channel. And I think with that, some of that is brand funded, and he works with brands closely.
I mean, web therapy, you know, Showtime is really, and Lisa Kudrow and her producing partner were really open to embracing the platform. They used Casperly in 2 episodes. So they kind of came in and brought their talent, which was really A-list Hollywood talent, and then brought in YouTubers going the other way. So, I mean, there's definitely a convergence, but I would say they're coming to us for new.
You know, the other thing is brands always try to do their own YouTube channel, and it really hasn't been that successful. I think
3% of the conversation.
You know,
not successful at all.
Yeah. You know, first of all, they put the wrong content up. They just, you know, a lot of brands have just thrown up their ads or just sort of stuff about the brand. There's really no storytelling. There's no point of view. And so brands have started to go look to other channels on YouTube to sort of bring the brands into it with a more authentic voice, because, you know, there's information on YouTube. I mean, if you need to, you know, about a brand and things like that, but there's really not sort of a storytelling entertainment value to it. I mean, we use it to promote some of the other stuff we're doing on other platforms, but it's not really, it really hasn't been successful sort of network or channel for a brand other than
Red Bull.
Yeah, well, Red
And
Bull is a
GoPro.
media
actually,
company.
GoPro,
Yeah.
right.
Marriott.
GoPro has
Yeah.
people making content for
Yeah,
them.
and Marriott is trying, but we'll see how successful the content is.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we will go ahead and wrap there. I would ask you all to join me, please, and thank you for what was really an excellent and dynamic group for an hour plus, which I